like to say this is, off the hill, and it's such a pleasure for us to get off the hill and into the community. So thanks for joining us this evening. I am Eileen McQuaid. I'm a professor of biology and associate dean of the faculty at Westmont. So here representing the provost's office, but also it's such a wonderful occasion to be able to brag and enjoy a faculty member from the main campus there. Before I get started and introduce John, I do want to just thank the Westmont Foundation. They sponsor this event, they help organize it, and we are just grateful for the opportunity to get our faculty into the community, talking about the things they love and the things that they are experts in. So now let me move on to introducing our speaker, and I believe there's also students here that John will also introduce. So John Blondell is a professor of theater arts and global ambassador for the performing arts at Westmont, founding artistic director of the Lit Moon Theater Company and its international extension Lit Moon World. He's also the director of the Lit Moon World Theater Festivals and co-founder of the Verona Shakespeare Fringe Festival. To date, John has directed over 100 productions in the US, Europe, and Eurasia. His Lit Moon productions have been seen in Macedonia, Albania, Montenegro, Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Poland, Canada, Scotland, China, Armenia, Georgia, and Italy. Other international credits include productions in Finland, Macedonia, Albania, Kazakhstan, and Yerevan. So simply put, John gets around. And many accolades have followed him around the world. John's Bitola National Theater production of Henry VI, Part 3, was featured at the 2012 Globe to Globe Festival presented by Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in London, and his Westmont College production of The Pirates of Penzance received 3 national awards, including Distinguished Production of a Musical and Distinguished Director of a Musical from the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. So, not bad, right? More local honors have been similarly showered upon him. John is the recipient of 13 Independent Theater Awards for Excellence in Directing, the 2003 Faculty Research Award from Westmont, and in 2013 was named Teacher of the Year in the Humanities at Westmont. In 2009, the Santa Barbara Independent named John a local hero for his tireless devotion to the international theater community, and we certainly concur with that. In the spring and summer of 2013, John will direct Uncle Vanya for Lit Moon, Aeschylus's Prometheus Bound for the Roman Theater Heraclea in Macedonia, and Shakespeare's Richard III for Prague Shakespeare. John has been a valuable voice on the faculty and an inspiring presence in the classroom and on the stage. When I have listened to John do a reading, he makes the prose just come alive, and I am spellbound. And so always appreciate John sharing that gift with the Westmont community. He can be playful, he can be hilarious, he really can be anything he wants to be in those readings. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for his ambitious and stirring vision for the theater arts at Westmont, and I'm thrilled that he's here to share a little bit about that vision and their latest production about Santa Barbara's own Flying A studio. So thank you, John, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. I'm gonna get this fired up again. Thank you for doing such a good job of reading my stuff so well. I'm delighted to be here this afternoon. Thank you, Eileen, for the lovely introduction. Thank you to the Westmont Foundation for sponsoring this event. Thank you to the Gady Institute and Aaron Sizer, who has helped promote it and organize it with me. Thank you to Scott Craig, who has helped promote it to get all of you people here. And thank you to Doug Conrad for making me sound so good. And a special thanks to my students also, who you are going to hear from in just a moment. So this afternoon, I am going to spend some time talking about the development of a play that has been cooking for over 10 years. Sometimes we didn't know it was cooking, but it turns out that it has been. And so in just a week, we're going to be opening it a week from tomorrow at Westmont, and I'll be telling more about opportunities to get those tickets in just a second. Of course, the play, and probably the reason that we are here, is because of the play's relationship with the American Film Manufacturing Company. Later they dropped manufacturing, or otherwise known as the Flying A, and the rich and storied history of silent film movie making in Santa Barbara. And I'm going to talk about the genesis of the play, talk about the way that it developed. I'm going to talk about the play itself, all the while integrating the story of Flying A with the fantasy about the Flying A that you will see on stage in just a few days. Water. Most of the talk, I'm going to stick to the text, but then I'll spin out now and then, and for jokes. One of my first directing mentors, while a graduate student at UCSB, was named Robert Egan. Bob invited me into the grad program there during the winter of 1983. It was in February, as a matter of fact. It's a kind of Saturn return to entertain these thoughts now exactly 40 years later. I took classes and many seminars from him about acting and directing and tragic comedy and modern drama. He was the first American to direct in what is now called North Macedonia. In a wild set of coincidences, I would become the second, more than 15 years after he did. He has passed, but his influences bubble in me to this day. One day, I remembered him telling me something to the effect that he was always on the lookout for material that he wanted to direct. He didn't so much direct plays as material that interested him. If that material didn't exist as dramatic material, he'd create it. He wanted to direct a version of Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, so he adapted and directed it. He wanted to direct Peter Beagle's The Last Unicorn, so he did the same. He wanted to direct The Great Gatsby. He adapted it, but died before he could direct it. The story about directing what has become Diamond to Dust, a Flying A fantasy, is one such story. I wanted to direct a play about shooting a Flying A movie. I shared the idea with Michael Bernard, right there. He loved the idea. He wrote it. I'm directing it. End of story. Good night. Thank you very much. I always think that's funny, and it turned out it was funny. So, I'm so happy. Indeed, there's much more to the story, though, so I'll back up. In the summer of 2012, there was a centennial birthday celebration for the founding of the American Film Manufacturing Company at the Pollock Theater at UCSB, which was to feature several films and context about the company. I invited Michael Bernard to attend it with me, and we were blown away by the significance of the Flying A to Santa Barbara, as well as to the entire silent film industry in the early 20s. At the same time as the event, there was an exhibition of Flying A material at the Santa Barbara Historical Museum, so Michael and I visited one weekend afternoon. As I remember it, we were wandering around the museum, and I said something to the effect, I would love to direct a comedy about the making of a Flying A movie, one of those comedies where everything seems to go wrong. Only later, by the way, did I learn from one of my collaborators on this project and a film art director that, at least in film, things always go wrong in film. Michael loved the idea, and he quickly drafted a treatment of it, which was read and discussed by a writing group he is part of in LA. We talked about it, but the energy for the project waned as we went on to other ideas and projects. It remained on the back burner for 10 years, as long as the Flying A existed, by the way. Then last spring, as I was thinking of what I would like to do with my students at Westmont, I thought about this project and wondered about this yet-to-be-written play about the gloried past of Santa Barbara and the actors who walk the same streets as I do, and spent chunks of time dreaming of ways to tell stories. I talked with my Westmont Theater Department colleague and chair, Mitchell Thomas. He's also out there. I talked with Michael Bernard. Could we pull this off the back burner and put it on the hot and smoking front? The answer was a resounding yes. We commissioned Michael, and he was off to the races. I've always thought of this as a Valentine to Santa Barbara, so it's appropriate that we are producing it in February. I had no idea what the play was to become, but I knew it should be a comedy, and I knew a silent movie should be part of the performance. I knew I wanted to direct the movie, but I've never directed a movie. As Eileen said, I've directed over 100 plays, but never a movie. I knew I needed help. I needed a team. I called Michael Mortilla, a longtime friend, and the first composer for the Lit Moon Theater Company, of which I am founding artistic director. Michael is the go-to person in the country to create music for silent films, and also composes for theater, dance, and just about anything else. I told him about the idea. He jumped at it. He was in. He introduced me to Dana Driscoll, who's right here, Professor Emeritus of Film at UCSB, the producer and creator of the documentary about the Flying A called An American Film Company, and the host and producer of the centennial birthday event Michael and I attended a decade ago that inspired the project. I wrote to him when I was in London teaching on Westmont's London Theatre May term. He said he would be in London while I was there, so let's meet at BFI so we could watch some Flying A movies. So we did, and we did. I asked him to participate. He said yes, he was in. So Dana's here tonight to correct any factual inaccuracy, and Michael's here to correct me about, well, just about anything else. Dana was in, amazing. I quickly enlisted Darcy Scanlon, visionary theater designer and film art director, marvelous costume designer, Lynn Marie Martins, Westmont and Cal Arts grad, and Jonathan Hicks to technically direct and design lights. I've put actors in Jonathan's lovely lights for nearly 20 years, and the team was nearly complete. I was worried. What about the film parts of the play? Dana was going to help me direct, even though I probably didn't know it at the time. But what about the equipment and editing and shooting and a team for that? Would we shoot on the department's video camera? Would it be enough? Then in late October, I went to a film event at Westmont and ran into and started talking to Eric Rodkey, who was also here, who works for Verite in Santa Barbara, a film and video production company. I thought, wow, Eric, what are his interests? And would he be interested? We met, I learned of his love for early film and his desire to be involved in the project, and we were complete. He was in. Michael was pouring out drafts. We read a draft in late December, and we were to begin production in early January. The Western unit of the American Film Manufacturing Company moved to Santa Barbara in the summer of 1912. Previous iterations of American existed in the Southwest and Orange and San Diego counties prior to that, but by the summer of 1912, American was in Santa Barbara. The producer, Sam Hutchinson, who is on the left, leased a former ostrich farm at State and Isley, where they set up shop. Shooting took place in and around Santa Barbara, but the company's headquarters were in Chicago, where the company was administrated and where the films were printed and promoted. Hutchinson very soon was on the lookout for property he could purchase, for a unit that was growing and expanding. He settled on a spot at Mission and Chapala. You can still see part of the original structure that day at Chapala and Mission. American would soon grow to over 1.5 city blocks right in that area, and sport 9 to 10 working companies that made westerns, social dramas, social comedies, and one of the most popular forms of the day, the serial. Think today's episodic television, in which a long narrative unfolds over many hours. The serials were romantic adventure stories and always ended in a cliffhanger. From 1912 to 1920, American made over 900 movies in Santa Barbara. So, of course, many of these movies are smaller movies, one-reel movies, but still over 900 movies. American artists included some of the most famous artists of the day, including Lottie Pickford, Mary Miles Minter, Jack Kerrigan, the director William Desmond Taylor, a young Victor Fleming, who would go on to direct Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz, was a young cinematographer at American. Shooting took place on one of 2 glass studios, nicknamed Little Glass and Big Glass, that looked much like greenhouses and allowed the studio to shoot on multiple stages whenever there was light. Not a good shot of this because of the contrast, but there, you've seen that shot. So that is Little Glass, right, Dana? Outside Little, and so, I mean, I've used this shot for this event, and Dana used this shot for his event, and I just love this shot. It's, so much of the atmosphere and the energy and all of the people here and right at the Chapala and Mission area. Two famous Flying A films comprise Diamond to Dust's central action and main subplot. The Diamond from the Sky is a serial adapted from the romantic novel of the same name by Roy L. McCardle. It was adapted for the screen by American, and shooting began in 1915. It featured Lottie Pickford, Irving Cummings, Charlotte Burton, and William Russell. Ultimately, American shot 60 reels of footage in 30 episodes, about 15 hours of film. It's hard to know exactly how many places it played, but it's likely it was seen in most towns that had the technology to project it. It was certainly one of the most popular serials of the day. No footage of the film exists today. The film that comprises the subplot, or a subplot, called Damaged Goods, was made in 1914. It was something of a cause of one of Americans' matinee idols of the day, Richard Bennett, who wanted to raise awareness to the significance and dangers of venereal disease. The film has a very interesting provenance. Originally a play by the French playwright Eugène Briot, Bennett had it translated and played it on stage in New York across the country. He then got Upton Sinclair interested in the project, and Sinclair took on the cause as his own. He adapted the play into a novel, which was then adapted for screen by American. Though controversial in its day, it was a popular and critical success. It received positive reviews and played to turn away crowds. 428 frames used for the copyright exist in the Library of Congress, but no other footage exists today. 1920 saw American's last production. They disbanded for a number of global and industry reasons, including America's entry into World War I, the Spanish influenza pandemic of 1918, changes in distribution practices, and access to capital. By the end of 1921, that golden age of Santa Barbara movie making was gone. According to Dana, prominent historian of American, the legacy of American is significant. They existed at a very important time in the silent movie era, and they were big and important enough to create hundreds of movies. American made movies in a period when the industry was still figuring out what the industry was and what movies were. The beauty of American is that they did it all in a very concise period of time, about 10 years, and their movies create an important portrait of early 20th century filmmaking. The story and events of Diamond to Dust are fantasy, though most of the characters are based on folks who worked at or for American, though not at the same time, or in the same films. Our version of the story includes the aforementioned actors, Lottie Pickford, Mary Miles Minter, and Jack Kerrigan, though only Pickford appeared in the real Diamond from the Sky. Producer Sam Hutchinson also figures. Director William Desmond Taylor. We'll see several of these folks in a second. There he is. And cinematographer Victor Fleming. But we have changed Victor's gender to Victoria. The play is set in 1915. America has yet to enter the war to end all wars, and American is wrapping up shooting Diamond from the Sky. The action is set in 4 locales: studio screening room, producer Sam Hutchinson's office, a boarding house where many of the actors live. Incidentally, one of the houses where flying actors live still exists on De La Vina, and the studio itself. The action concerned efforts to get Diamond finished, along with the shooting of a comedy short by the company's comedy team, Little Larry and Francis, who are based on Fatty Arbuckle and Mabel Normand. At the same time, the director, William Desmond Taylor, itches to make something bigger, something grander, to move out of serials into features. Hutchinson will have none of it. We watch some dailies at the beginning of the play. We see some scenes get shot. We head to the boarding house where cover-ups, mistaken identities, hiding, romantic misalliances, and door slamming comprise some of the big events in a beautifully crafted farce scene. We head back to Hutchinson's office where Taylor, who has latched on to an idea to direct Damaged Goods as a feature, pitches it to Hutchinson. We return to the studio to shoot Diamond. We head back to Hutchinson's office, where Hutchinson woos a would-be investor and unveils a new business plan that asks the artist to sign a per-picture contract rather than the present one that is per week. We return to the boarding house, where we learn that much of the company has turned down Hutchinson's new contract offer and are heading to LA. And we end at the studio, where we see some final goodbyes, and we watch the final few minutes of the serial, Diamond from the Sky. Whoop. Michael Bernard has written a truly wonderful comedy. He's taken inspiration from early 20th century comics and comedy teams, silent films, Preston Sturges movies, early Hollywood, French theatrical farce, and contemporary comedians and stories. He's written a really big play with a big imagination and a ton of comic convention. He's also written a photo play, the word for the scripted silent movies, that ends the play. He's written a play for a big cast, something that's not done much these days because of the costs of making big cast comedies. The play has a kind of collective protagonist in the way that I think of it. Really, the play is about the whole motley crew of Michael's version of American during the middle teens. He's taken lots of liberties, put folks together in places where they factually weren't, but this is theater. This is imagination. This is a made-up story about a real place, which was one of Michael's early ideas for a title. In the play, everyone involved is invested in making movies here, in Santa Barbara. And they live and love and shoot diamond and try to shoot damaged goods. By the play's end, though, the lure of Hollywood is beckoned. Most of the folks have left or are leaving, though a few characters remain and start work on a feature that we understand to be damaged goods. It's a great story. It has a wistful longing at its heart of something pretty great that once was, but was only around for a chapter rather than a long unfolding book. The book about Hollywood movie making is long and storied. Santa Barbara has but a chapter. But Michael creates a version that invites us to imagine what it might have been like and dream about once was. Though, as I said, the protagonist is really the collective, the group, the story does center on four figures, including three actual American figures, as in the film company, all of whom are central to American success during that period. As I mentioned, there's Sam Hutchinson, the producer, owner of the studio, and whose efforts in advancing the technology of the age, along with making popular movies and serials, were important to American success. He had an interesting double life. Hutchinson had two families living nearly side by side each other in Chicago, which was where Americans' offices were and where film was developed and sent out and promoted. Things were shot in Santa Barbara. They got finished and produced in Chicago. In the play, Hutchinson's choices relative to how he deals with his artists leads to the demise of the studio. Hancock, the writer, is a made-up guy, but comes from a variety of influences, including Eddie Bracken in The Miracle at Money Creek, or Hail the Conquering Hero, and Ben Stiller in the Meet the Parents movies and There's Something About Mary. At the end of the play, he has the opportunity to write what we understand to be damaged goods, and it looks like he might direct it. But the artists have gone. And Hutchinson's wife, who has never acted, might be the studio's new star. The director, William Desmond Taylor, longs to direct something significant and is also an opportunist and a serial womanizer. He leaves for Hollywood by the end of the play to hopefully get work in one of the four studios down there. The real William Desmond Taylor was killed in one of Hollywood's first murder scandals in 1922, perhaps by Charlotte Shelby, the mother of the young star Mary Miles Minter, both of whom play significant roles in our play. Lottie Pickford was the star of Diamond from the Sky and the sister of the most famous movie star of the day, Mary Pickford. In our play and in life, Lottie battled alcohol, and that battle leads to some of the wildest events and some memorable moments of the play. By the performance's end, though, and once the audience sees the final moments of Diamond from the Sky unspool, we see her insignificance to the entire story. Witness the popular appeal of a magnetic actor, and experience a kind of artistic transfiguration where she takes the commonplace and makes it remarkable. Here we just have a few images of the actual diamond. These are promotional images. This is not celluloid. They are shots that were made for promotion. There's one shot, maybe a little hard to see, but these I think that tell an interesting tale it's actually something that we have been working so hard on, and has exercised our imaginations as well as the size of our faces. Because, of course, the kind of acting that was popular during that time is not necessarily the kind of acting that is popular today. And so you can see the strong kind of physical and facial reaction that is caught in this shot here. If it's not seen, it's worthless. So it doesn't make any difference what the actor feels. You have to be able to present the sense, the feeling, the situation has to be constantly bubbling on the actors' faces and in the actors' bodies. Again, I love this shot. This shot, and I don't know if you can see Lottie Pickford's eyes, but they are the size of billiard balls, and they are popping out of her head. And I think it's just it's a remarkable kind of symbol for much of the acting at this time, and the extent to which the actors threw themselves into these roles. There's no such thing as restraint or as kind of vulnerability or kind of genuineness. What we're doing, we're telling a big romantic story in a big romantic way, and the actors have to have the size to be able to project that at all times. As a director, the most crucial early work for me involves developing the right kind of space to experience and see the play in. So I always begin work on the set, and only with the scenic designer, not really in collaboration with the other collaborators. It's always with the designer, only scenic. For me, everything comes from space. The set is not just ornamentation, decoration, or location. It is a machine for the play. It is the instrument through which the actors unleash action. So Darcy Scanlon and I got to work. I sent her some inspiration, some ideas, some images that I loved, and she soon created a set of cool ideas that included, maybe kind of hard to see this, but I'll describe. That included a false proscenium. So a proscenium is the frame around the stage that creates the picture frame through which we watch the action on a proscenium stage. So she has created another proscenium inside the proscenium of the stage, and she has taken an American title card, and we are using the art from that title card, and then we are created a proscenium with that art and with the Flying A insignia and logo dead center. Then she created this marvelous, hard to see, but a marvelous circular platform, and you can see Mary Miles Minter there, a kind of, wispy, ghostly figure, and there was a piano, and there was a circular platform, and there was a bed that figures an important action in the play, and it was also beautiful, and I just loved it, and I soon said, no, this is wrong. So then we were doing we were meeting for hours over at Christmas time. And we would set up shop on Zoom, and 3 hours we were just trying things and we were playing. And so she created this other great space, which again you can't see, but trust me, it's cool. And in this case there are 12 doors on left and right, and still the hovering actors and characters, and it was also wrong. And so I sent her a message one day. And I was talking in just a message, I was talking about the essential theatricality of a white cube, and a reminder that Americans shot in glass studios, the aforementioned little and big glass. I also said that we needed a structure that could contain 4 interior spaces and a lot of roughhouse. We needed an office, we needed a studio, we needed a boarding house, we needed a projection room. She came back with that ingenious plan, with a twist that propelled the production out of the realm of realism and into the realm of imagination and fantasy. You can see that, hooray. So she created a white cube. And in the original idea of this white cube, the walls were meant, we were going to make them essentially out of paper, and the walls were meant to glow, so we had a sense of little glass that would be allowing the light in, and we could change the light relative to the different times of day to give us a sense of what that was. Well, it didn't work too well. So we're going to have to make it a hard structure, which is just fine. But in this design, all of the everyday scenes, including the whole space and the actors in kind of everyday scenes are in white. Everyone is in white. And then when we move to the scenes where we are shooting the movies are all in color. Costumes are in color, the locations are in color, and I thought, what a great metaphor. I just love it. The scenography, or in other words, everything we see takes on a large metaphorical and emotional meaning. It creates a sign for the significance of movies in our lives as a place for dreams, fantasy, color, vividness, escape, romance, technicolor. They are larger than life, more colorful than life for all to see. It's a very modern idea, maybe even a postmodern idea, that actually contains a romantic notion in an historical sense. The romantic hero gives energy to the group. And of course, the movies give energy to our lives and replace the common with the spectacular, or at least they can. They have that possibility. And now, in a world where we are just now emerging from the gray of COVID, and darkness of life is everywhere we care to look, the idea of the scenography for this play is that movies provide some color, some difference, some grand crash and glitter. It's a genius idea by Darcy. I love it, and it's what we are doing. That is a scene that that is the set for which you will see a short scene in just a few minutes, where the beginning of the play, we are watching some dailies that the producer, Hutchinson, the director, Taylor, the editor, and the writer, Hancock, are watching. And the dailies have been shot, and there's a problem because, well, Lottie Pickford has been drinking a little too much, and she's having a hard time standing up. And so we watch these dailies. Hutchinson goes crazy, but you got to get this picture finished. And so we move into the studio in the second scene. And the first thing that we see is the filming of a comedy short. And then after that, we move into filming a scene from Diamond from the Sky. So this is the set for the comedy short. And so what we are doing in the play is we are having scenes that happen in kind of everyday life, but then we have scenes where we are watching the action being filmed. So this is this is the set for the beginning of the second act that we are going to watch the cast do in just a couple minutes. Just, again, another idea, the same, a different scene with the idea of color in the white. And then we eventually end the play with 10 minutes of footage that we have filmed on location in a super secret place. So you need to come to watch it in order to have the secret be solved. As I've been developing the show and thinking about it, I keep returning to a piano piece by Claude Debussy called The Sunken Cathedral. I would say it in French, but I would embarrass myself, so I will use the English translation. The piece is based on an ancient Breton myth, where a cathedral rises out of the water on a windless day when the sea is transparent. It's a gorgeous piece. The music evokes the cathedral as it rises out of the water. We hear bells chime, priests chant, and the organ play. It exists for a resplendent day and then sinks slowly back into the water to stay until it is summoned again. I'm haunted by this piece. I played this piece and practiced it as a young high school piano student, and I played it in a recital, and I kind of nailed it. But after that, no other piano piece held the magic that one did, and I would soon stop taking piano for other interests and desires. I returned to this piece, though, as inspiration for what we are doing here. I wanted to bring something out of the past, out of the depths, out of the water, to live again. I wanted to bring it into the present in the spirits and hearts and minds and bodies of these Westmont students, and much of what you see is inspired by the spirit of retrieval, but also letting go. The cathedral in the story comes back, emerges again. In this play, we allow American to do so, but just as in the cathedral, it has to disappear again, to recede from the here and now to where it actually is, to the past and then. We bring it back, only to let it go. This is Little Glass in the 40s. It existed for a very long time, 20 years or more after the disbanding of American. I find I enjoy directing movies. I'm available. It has an entirely different rhythm from theater directing, but it is cool and it demands tremendous energy. Swedish film director Ingmar Bergman has a great story about this. In the theater, if you don't feel much like working, you can hang around with the actors, maybe get a coffee, go to a museum, have a chat, and allow yourself to be yourself that day, because there'll always be tomorrow. And you have many more tomorrows in your schedule. Film requires a tremendous amount of energy every day. You have the shots, and you have to get the shots, or you get behind, and time is money, and people wait for you and rely on you. We did 4 days of filming for the various things you will see in the show. 3 of them stand as some of the most memorable days of my life. Even more to the point, I enjoy directing silent movies because I can do all the side directing I want. I can rant and scream and be as over the top as I am while rehearsing a play. I love the partnership with the actors, which always inspires and also exhausts me. I've also realized that this form is just made for music, and music is made for it. Music and film are the perfect expressive mediums for one another, and once we get some pesky language out of the way, then the expressive rhythm and passion of one reveals that of the other. Dana Driscoll says that in the silent era, no 2 silent film performances were the same, since the piano player would be different from night to night and theater to theater. One could go to the picture many times and not have the same experience twice. I love this too, and this was a revelation for me to think about, because this brings us closer to the stage, where no 2 performances are alike. Dana suggests that the silence are like this kind of hybrid between the time-based performance of music and then the kind of the closed system of film. But the open system, music, changes, amplifies, transforms the closed system from musician to musician and for audience to audience. I'd never thought of this before. One of the things that has become deeply moving to me, and the cast and I have talked about it a lot, is that these people are playing characters inspired by real people. They walked around Santa Barbara. They had all their attributes as well as their shortcomings. They had their demons. And they were trying to do something new and worthwhile. And they maybe loved the ocean, the mountains, and the sun as much as I do. We've tried to be careful with them. Yes, they are inventions of Michael and the actors, but they had real lives and tragedies, and we wanted to be careful about them. They existed. They were soul and body. It's always a joy to work with my students at Westmont since they are so careful, discerning, wise, and sensitive in their approaches. They also make me laugh. And finally, and you recall that I mentioned that in both of these kind of holy grail films, and this is something I think is just remarkable about what Michael has done, is that he's taken these, one damaged goods and then the other, The Diamond from the Sky, these films that none of the motion picture exists anymore. And he has used those pieces as what we are trying to bring back to life again. I think it's just a genius move. And so when we shot what is for us, Michael's version, our version of the end of Diamond from the Sky, the footage that we shot is going to be the only footage that exists of it. And that's really moving to me. It means something. We've added something to American's legacy. We've somehow become part of it, and we are now inextricably linked to it. Last, this is a week before we open. I think this is a wonderful play. It's been a wonderful project, and I am only sorry that it is reaching something of an end. I've enjoyed the new colleagues, the size and expansiveness of the collaborations, and deeply enjoyed the laughter, conversations, and engagement with a lovely cast. So, what I want to do now is make a little shift. We're going to have about 90 seconds of a scene change. And what we are going to see is as I mentioned, the beginning of scene 2 of the play, where the comedy team Michael's version of American's comedy team, Little Larry, inspired by Fatty Arbuckle, and Francis, inspired by Mabel Normand, are shooting a short called Hunting Hijinks. And then we are going to see William Desmond Taylor burst in because, those folks have appropriated his set. So we're going to watch this scene, and then we are going to have some time for questions. Questions, Q&A for me, Q&A for the cast, and a little bit of time for conversation. So, thank you. Don't go away. 90 seconds.
Megan, go.
Yes, sir. Quiet, quiet.
Fleming. I don't have to like that they like it.
No one thinks any of this is real anyways, right, honey? Sorry, dear.
Then, as soon as I leave, the hunting buddy shows up. We're going to have to shoot some exteriors of me forgetting things and turning around to go back home, but we can shoot that later. Right now, let's just get all the shots in the house while we can.
Whatever you say, boss.
Excuse me? Excuse me? I don't understand what is happening.
We're making a picture, you gas bag. That's where we capture actors on film for public consumption.
Not lovely for you, but unfortunately, your time has reached its nadir.
Speak English.
I apologize for my eloquence, Lawrence. Get off my set!
Don't blow your top, fancy pants. We're running late and we can get this in one shot.
I don't recall allowing my set to be torn up like this. I also don't recall giving you permission to use my actors.
You don't own them, Taylor. Everyone here is under weekly contracts to the studio. That makes them just as much mine as they are yours.
I thought I didn't own them.
Can it?
The longer this talk goes on, the less light there will be.
Come on, Des, we got held up. We won't be long.
I'm almost on my break.
I'm not moving till we do this.
I can easily move you, darling.
What about me? Fine!
Please hurry.
If you can find a way to leave us alone, we can get this in one shot. Shoot the exteriors tomorrow. Ready to go?
Ready.
Let's go. Ready to roll, Victoria?
Rolling. Hunting hijinks. Scene 1, take 1.
Music, please, Myrna.
She's coming.
Action. Hold it. And we are fighting and yelling, fighting and yelling, fighting and yelling, and Larry gives in! And I'm out of the house.
Hello, it's me, Larry, calling my friend to come on over here so we can go on that hunting trip we planned to go on that my wife wouldn't let me go on. And that's the plot of our film.
Let's bring in the idiot. Woo!
She's coming back!
I forgot my hat.
Oh no! How convenient. No one noticed the person hiding underneath the sheets.
Damn it, Taylor! And she leaves, the craziness begins again.
Look! A bear!
Oh no! I forgot my purse! I'm coming back! And the guns come out.
Look! A fly!
And no one is at the door to see me come in. I watch you. I grab George
domineering women, gunshots, hiding, but surefire. You really think someone could just hide under a rug like that? The person wouldn't see him? She had to step all over me.
That's why it's funny, George.
What about the whiskey down the face? You really think he buys his blood?
Blood does have a much thicker viscosity. It rolls down the face much slower. Trust me.
What? I can't tell if it's too stupid or just enough stupid.
Too stupid? Have you been to pictures? Too stupid's what we do.
Okay, let's wrap.
Wrapped.
I'm getting smoke.
All right, everyone. Let's make some real magic. Can I get a gypsy cat, please?
You guys, thank you. Great job. So, this is an opportunity to open up for questions, observations, stories. Can you hear? Is this okay, Doug? Am I reading? Questions? Yes.
Did the cast watch any or many silent films before they did this?
Yes. Yeah, that's one thing that we started with. We watched some as a group, and then they were also watching a lot of their own as well. Yes.
Did you find yourself watching your dailies?
All the time. Like I look at it like every day. and like you know, I'm sending them to friends, and I don't know if Eric knows that I am because you know, okay, how many views are there on Vimeo? And so no, I know we're supposed to just keep it within the team, but don't look what I did. I said this, so yeah, I watch all the time. Mitchell.
I guess this is a question for Dana. Is it an anomaly that this is lost, or are there not many artifacts from this time period? And I love the idea of that because I tend to think of film so permanent and theater so ephemeral. And like you said, John, this is kind of blurring that idea, and I appreciate that. But I'm just wondering about the mystery of all this being lost when it was so wildly popular in that time.
Well, the reason I became fascinated with the teens in the 1910s is sort of this adolescence that silent film is going through. But as far as the question about what survives, roughly about 10%. And that's everything by all the different companies. American did reasonably well. I mean, they fielded roughly about 10%. There are some film companies that did much poorer in terms of their survival rate. The disappointing thing for American, as John says, is that the two really significant things they did, Damaged Goods and Diamond in the Sky, we can't find any of it. Now, I just make one comment there that I always say that we don't know yet. Something could show up. Remember that American distributed around the world. So there could be something in former Yugoslavia. You know, there's something lurking in an archive somewhere that is in a different language, titles, and perhaps the title has been torn off, and therefore we don't even know what's there, because we don't get into it until the third scene of what's in that archive. So yeah, I still am hanging on to the hopes that someday I'll see something from Damaged Goods or Diamond in the Sky. But yeah, about 10% overall.
Producers wanted everybody to buy a new thing. Why should they save last year's thing?
Yes, Aaron.
I'm interested, John, in your description of the challenge of acting in a historical style that might be pretty unfamiliar to most of us. I'm struck
sort of switching from, you know, these two styles, and you sort of have to marry those together.
I feel like the experience I had was I envisioned it more along the concept of playing a character within a character, and I had to really hone in on that, and it was truly a lot of John pushing me to my absolute limit in the rehearsal, where I just thought I could not give any more, and then he kept pushing me until eventually I got there, but it was no easy feat, so you're absolutely right. It's definitely a struggle.
I think a lot of the acting today is very subtle, and it's very just like real, and like we're trying to like really portray like real life and how we like converse with each other just on a daily basis. And so I think we went in kind of like, because partially like some of that is like you're having conversations with real people, so there's like conversations between Lonnie and Des, or just between a lot of the different characters, and so we kind of went in with that. And John flipped our world upside down and was like, no, you need to be more dramatic than you've ever been in your whole life. And I think, me personally, my goal is to like not be dramatic, like, oh, okay, sorry, I don't need to be dramatic right now, but like, and so mine was like, so that's just totally not me as a person, and so having to go in and like, make my eyes as big as Lottie Pickford does in those photos, like it's just like, my face is learning to do new things. And it's so fun just to learn and like watch them do it, and then kind of try to learn how to do that ourselves. Yeah.
It's definitely difficult, but in the scene you saw Frances doing some coaching on the side. She was like, okay, I'm gonna do this next. John does that for us in rehearsal. So we'll be on stage and we'll be going in and we're like in the middle of doing one scene and we're going into a filming scene. John will be like, bigger! More! We're just trying to give it. So that definitely helps because we didn't do it alone. We're not up there trying to figure out how to do the silent film acting by ourselves. We did the research, we watched it, and then we have people telling us how to do it better. So that's really cool.
Yeah, but you also have to keep in mind the difference in his vocal tone between when he's telling you stop it, you need to take this direction, or good, you're doing good, keep going, keep pushing harder.
And then we stop, we're like, what? Oh, sorry.
It is such an interesting question, and it's written into, of course, the way that Michael conceived of this play. And you know, we didn't I didn't really want to make a kind of a copy of a kind of period style. I didn't want to watch old movies and then just copy that, or kind of or have a sense of what you know, kind of a 1920s theater might have been. You know, I wanted to try to grow something organic that felt like, okay, we have these two styles. We certainly has the whisper, certainly has the influence, certainly has the atmosphere and the flavor of all of it, without being encoded, and then just play that code. And so that's something that we're still finding. You know, it's great. I mean, it's great to have you here tonight to be their first audience. So you're their out of town tryout, I said, and so this is invaluable for them to feel the temperature of the room, because you know, it's a cliche to say that the theater doesn't get completed until an audience is there, but it's more than a cliche. Because what it really means is we kind of create about 40% of what is eventually going to be completed in that room when the audiences come and then started to make this supercharged, you know, sense of now when they start watching each other. So you know, every show that I watch is we open a show and all of a sudden it grows a new faculty just with the first audience. And so this is still, but this is, the show is still really a baby. I mean, we're just growing it. We're in the last the last push of it. And I actually guarantee you that next week, this what we show will be very different, I think. Maybe even in structure, but certainly in kind of sense and energy and precision and yes, size, bigger, yes.
So speaking of the bigness that is essential in this genre of film and art form, what specifically were the factors that necessitated acting being so big and something that we would consider now to be overdramatic? And then what were the factors that led it to gradually change to be more and more realistic?
Well, that's such an interesting question. I mean, I can answer some of that from a theater history point of view, maybe better than I can as far as film goes. But as far as acting in the theater, I mean the kind of acting that we are going to find, the popular form of the theater in the last part of the 19th and the early part of the 20th century was the melodrama. So that's why the serial was a perfect actor vehicle for actors who were kind of trained in melodrama. And then Stanislavski comes to the United States in 1924, and with the Moscow Art Company, and then a couple of those actors stay, and then they start to teach that system of Stanislavski's more realistic kind of method that then by the time the group theater starts in 1930, then when we have Lee Strasberg and we have Ilya Kazan and we have Harold Klerman and Bobby Lewis and all these other actors who are in the group theater then start to teach and start to really make what is known as the American method, where the idea of psychological realism becomes the new fashion, becomes the new trend. I mean, what I could say is kind of what I know as far as acting on the stage is what we are seeing is, well, that was the fashion. That's what people wanted to see, certainly in terms of the theater. And then the theater starts to, and then the whole kind of combination of audience and actor, they start to change beginning in the 20s and then into the 30s. But certainly by the time we get into the 40s, as far as the stage goes, there's a whole other set of expectations for what, kind of fine acting was. Dana.
Just taking, for instance, the Mary Miles Minter person, the character, she began on the legit, on stage, as a very young child. And so she had to learn as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, to be able to project back all the way to the other end of the theater. And I'm sure that every person who came out of the legit, or for that matter, vaudeville, where you still had to push back quite a ways, some of them adapted to the idea, and Eric talked about this in terms of what the lens would do. And in the beginning of that era, we do hold back. It is the proscenium. You see a lot of people on the screen. Then, during a while of teens so much. By the end of the teens, you're pushing in, you're getting much tighter, you're getting your singles, 2 shots, everything's getting closer, and then of course that's going to ask an actor to behave in an entirely different way or look out of place.
I mean, part of the acting developed the way that it did, I think, in terms of the drama, and then I imagine in terms of film too, is these were media of events, and so the actor has to play the events, and so there's this event and that event, and there's reaction. There is not as much, as we talk about in the at least in the teens in the theater, and then in the part of the 19th century, it's not an art form. The acting is not necessarily an art form that is to the expression of psychology and what we would now call kind of authentic emotion. It was very much an art of showing, of artifice, but thought of in the best way, not fake, but an artistic excellence that is finely crafted in terms of the expressive ability of the actor to be able to, as Dana said, reach to the back of maybe a really big audience and hall and be able to hold that. Lovely question.
I'm a little confused in the overall context. Not going to be around to be able to see the production, which I'm sure will be fascinating. So my question is, and I hope this isn't a spoiler question, but so this little short scene is the beginning of the second act.
Second scene.
Second scene.
It's a play of 9 scenes.
Okay. And so, what happens in this scene? How does that contribute to how some of your major characters are ultimately changed by the last scene? Is that too broad a question? Might be.
No, we see. I think one of the things that the scene does is we get an opportunity to see 2 different kinds of material that the American is shooting. So they're shooting a simple, very basic, a comedy short. So that is one kind of material that they're shooting, and then and so we get to see a sense of it's kind of starting to populate the company of Americans, starting to populate the stage with the different characters and persona and personalities of what this kind of bigger company is. And so we watch this, and then the next scene we start to see Diamond from the Sky being shot. And then we see the different kinds of interpersonal problems and the issues that are going on between them. And so we're melding and we're wedding together both a story about people in a company as well as a company that is starting to film 2 different kinds of material. Michael.
Yeah, I just want to say it's also kind of just as a technique, it's a placeholder to introduce you, the audience, to what's happening in the concept. So the first scene you see is just in an office. Now you see this scene in, you see the film studio, and there's so much going on. There's somebody running a camera, there's somebody playing music to give the mood, and the actors, and so the consequences of what happens in this scene don't really pay off in the end. It allows you, the audience, to understand what's happening and meet people, and it's really the next scene where they start filming the next story. Now you know, so in your mind you're not asking all these questions like, what's that, what's that, what's that, you know, so the scene that's more important to the plot, you're already familiar with all the other stuff that's happening.
Okay, that's helpful.
I'm sorry, you won't be able to.
Yeah.
You said that these films don't exist now, but did you have any kind of working script or blueprint of what they were using so that in pretending to shoot a film, you're doing what they're presenting something that they did, or are you making all that up?
Well, kind of making a lot of it up. I read some. I did some research about certain kinds of directing.
But did you know what that film was that you're shooting a film? Did you know what that film was actually about?
Diamond.
As far as Diamond goes, yes, there's an actual the novelization of the story exists.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that exists, and then there was. There were newspaper kind of clips of that story.
Okay.
So a lot of the story exists. It's just the actual film that doesn't exist.
My husband and I went to see Dana when he spoke at UCSB, and he showed some silent movies. And one thing that I found really interesting
does move during these 19 hymns. But I've looked at enough of the reports from the company to know that the budget that a director would get, and some of these directors, Frank Borzetti being one of my favorites, he was only 21 when he first directed for America. He went on to have a great career in Hollywood, but they gave him a budget of effectively twice as much film as was in the movie. So you had a 2-to-1 shooting ratio. So you didn't have much room for, well, let's shoot it this way, and now we'll shoot it this way, and we'll solve it in editing.
Right.
It's no, you do it right, and you do it that way, and that's enough. And so, yes, and I must say that most definitely melding the different acting styles. For instance, Mary Miles Minter, who's been on the stage since she was 6, or whatever it might have been, and then somebody else who came out of vaudeville, and they had the style of doing turns in vaudeville, and they did it their way. Others would come with much more of the old, they'll start that way of doing things. You had to crush that all into the same scene and make all of those acting styles behave themselves. So a film director had a challenge.
And it's such an interesting point because it does suggest what the actors had to do, and I'm not sure about how many times that might have been rehearsed before, but still to be able to nail it in one take is quite a skill that is, I would imagine is developed by them as part and parcel of what a company like this would be doing.
And very difficult to show the emotion you're trying to show. You got one chance to do it.
Exactly. Jim.
I just watched Metropolis last night for the first time, and I can't believe it. I've never seen it. So to see this in the acting style and the over-the-topness, and it really makes sense what the actors have to do to make a silent film pop, to make it like have life, like what we're used to live theater having life, or even kind of life that a film can have. But one of the things that made me interested in is it's obvious to see what the actors have to do to make that thing work. Thinking of it as it was at one point, like pretty high technology and like a new thing, kind of like what music videos were maybe in our lifetime. Like it's a new thing and yes, it brings together stuff that we've been doing, but in a different way. So that what does that mean for a director? And also, what does it mean for like Michael for making music? I mean, Michael Mortillo, who's doing the score for this, is so in that world already. You would have an answer.
Well, what it's meant for Michael as far as music goes is actually fascinating, because he's generated new stuff every day, and then he came up and he watched and he threw everything away, and so he took 36 hours and he's completely rescoring it. But I mean, he doesn't, it's not written. He's making the music now. And so the thing that I like about that is that it was not based on a predetermined idea of his. He responded to the moment, he took videos, now he's making it as close to now as we can, because we are actually, in this case, what we are, for a variety of reasons, and we wanted his music to be part of it. So the music is going to be recorded rather than live. So, one early version was he was going to play every night, and then we just decided to abandon that idea. But to be able to have the music be, to first of all respond to exactly what he was seeing, rather than, because he doesn't live here, rather than ideas in the script or or discussions with me or some little videos. But so he came, and now he's making the whole thing really as we speak.
Very much a live theater approach.
Right.
Right. And what about for directing? You directed a silent film now, and you're directing a film about silent films. What kind of stuff did that bring up as a director that you haven't had to negotiate with?
I had a very good team of handholders, and they made the difficulty seem invisible to me. I mean, what I did was I directed the actors. And so I had so much help with Dana in the script, so much help with the editing with Eric. And so much of what you are seeing is actually choices made in cinematography, and in the way, in Dana really kind of teaching me how to take a script and then turn those into shots. Which is something that and so what I was able to do then is, okay, now I'm going to show up and I'm going to work with the actors now, and I'm going to rehearse with the actors so we get we have the right kinds of when you have the right kind of behaviors, the right kind of situations, the right kind of emotions, and pushing and pulling them, and then shooting it. And in almost almost every single case of what we shot of the various, 40 scenes or so that we shot over 3 or 4 days, it was almost always at the third or fourth take that we ended up taking. So that was always the shot for posterity.
You had a better budget than that.
We had a better budget. Well, everyone, thank you for coming.